hurricane force winds as we go into the overnight hours and tomorrow morning as the system actually approaches. Going for the afternoon for North Miami, we are expecting 3 to 6 would be the time for those tropical storm force winds. And going into Broward, notice a little later, it's going to take some time for us to actually feel the effects in Broward with this system. That 6 to 8 o'clock tonight, tropical storm force winds, stronger winds expected from 8 to 10. And then as we go into Sunday morning, we could be dealing with hurricane force winds just after 11 o'clock in the morning for Broward. Now let me show you why we're all going to be dealing with this system, because as this system pushes off the coast of Cuba, hurricane force winds extend from the center 70 miles. So the system could be well over the Florida Straits, and it will be impacting South Florida, especially once it makes landfall. We'll all be dealing with hurricane force winds. Tropical storm force winds from the center extend out 185 miles. So like I said yesterday, while we're waking up and dealing with hurricane force winds, tomorrow morning, our friends in Tampa will be dealing with tropical storm force winds. How long are we going to have these winds in place? Unfortunately, this storm is not moving at all. Once it does affect South Florida, it's going to stick around for quite some time. Hurricane force winds could be around for 14 hours. We're talking tropical storm force winds starting this morning and sticking around for 39 hours. You know who's going to have a lot more on our winds and what we're expecting with the system as it gets closer to us is meteorologist Luke Doris.
Yeah, thank you, Julie. Yeah, slow mover. Once it starts to really pick up with our winds as it approaches from the south. Those tropical storm force winds last a long, long time, and so do the hurricane force winds relatively as well. We're going to take a peek in and out of our Miami Tower Cam as we go through tonight and this morning as we watch the band start to lash South Florida. At this point, just a little bit of a lull. We had one come through over the past hour or so that has since drifted to the south and to the west of Miami, though we still have it in parts of the Keys and off to our south toward Homestead and Kendall, even though it's starting to move out there. We do have another one coming in back behind it. Your wind speeds gusty in spots, 23 miles per hour in Fort Lauderdale. It's quite a bit lighter right now through Miami and Kendall. These will come in bursts over the next several hours. And the wind gusts right now at about 30 in Fort Lauderdale, one of the windier spots. Pembroke Pines is at about 30 as well. We'll see those pick up through the day. Watch this through our computer model. This is the GFS, just an idea to give you a little picture of how the winds will degrade through the day. This is by 1 this afternoon, and you see the winds picking up, gusting at times 50, 60 possibly miles per hour, especially in the southern part of the peninsula. We go deeper into the day and back into this evening, and we're approaching hurricane force winds in spots as Hurricane Irma moves in out of the south. Now, it's going to take longer to get into those winds the further north that you are. I'll take you through tonight. This is early on our Sunday morning, and we see 80 to 90 mile per hour wind gusts through the Keys, through the very southern part of the peninsula and southeast Florida, the coastal metros, probably approaching hurricane force wind at that time, and they increase as we go through our Sunday. There it is by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and we look to be experiencing a good chunk of Sunday in hurricane force winds, especially look at the Keys as a potential landfall is possible in the middle and lower Keys. As the storm moves off to the north, there's Sunday evening, 5 o'clock. And still 100 plus mile per hour winds for most all of the area. So the forecast looks like this. We have the hurricane centered right now over the northern shores of Cuba, and it skips along that northern shore until later on Saturday evening. This is by 7 o'clock. At this point, somewhere around 5, 7, give or take, is when it looks to start to make its turn, and it goes northward. As it does that, it starts toward the Keys or somewhere, the forecast cone has some leeway in there, but in that general vicinity. And what I want to highlight here is some of us might be looking at that and saying, yeah, the worst of the winds, the core, the eye, might be further away from my neighborhood in the Miami or Fort Lauderdale metro. Keep in mind the Keys in very high danger from those winds. And everybody that's under the storm surge warning, that has not changed. The effects of that storm surge still not at all budged by the relation of that eye wall and where it may go. We're still looking at 5 to 10 feet as it's such a big, broad system. It's got a huge wind field. It can push a whole lot of water along the southeastern coast of Florida and on the southwest side as well. As it departs, it'll be a different time as the system moves to the north. There we are by Sunday evening. We get that wrap around, and the hurricane looks to run along or just offshore the west side of Florida. So storm surge forecast 5 to 10 feet through the Bahamas, 5 to 10 feet through the northern coast of Cuba where it's at the moment. And then in South Florida, 5 to 10 feet for the coastal regions, including the Keys and Southwest Florida, from Captiva to Cape Sable. 8 to 12 feet, some serious inundation possible in Southwest Florida. Quickly, I want to tell you too, the winds and the storm surge threat, that both remain extreme for South Florida. The rainfall threat, we could see some isolated 20-inch rain totals, and a tornado threat for today as well. We are under a slight risk in the yellow shaded area that you see, where some brief spin-ups could occur at times today, guys.
Sitting here talking about everything as we're looking at your maps. Yep. Luke and Julie, what about, okay, you talk about that storm surge. And you say 40 hours that we're going to get those tropical storm force winds and those hurricane force winds. So that water's being pushed up, right? So pushed up towards people's homes and on these islands and along the coastline. How long before it all recedes back down?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't believe we know the answer quite yet, because the system itself is going to be with us for so long.
Right.
We actually need to wait until the system gets so far north, and then our winds start to shift out of the different direction, because the wind, unfortunately, will be piling in, wrapping around the center of Irma as it continues up Florida.
Yeah, it's an onshore flow that causes the storm surge. So that's moving, of course, out of the southeast to the northwest for the southeastern part of Florida. As the storm goes north, it spins around to the other side. That would push it off, but you're going to be flooded at that point. So it's really tough for us to predict, you know, when's your flooding going to go down. The storm surge itself would be done once the storm moves north. Of eastern Florida. Opposite for western Florida.
Right.
This is why we have to be prepared for so long, because we don't know how long we're going to have this mess in our backyards.
You know, I'll stay on that topic of storm surge and flooding. We had Carlos Suarez earlier this morning. He was in Fort Lauderdale, where they have concerns because of the full moon and because of the tidal situations. Could you break down the science of why the storm surge plus all these other factors is going to make it exponentially dangerous there?
Well, you know, here in South Florida, we always talk about with just full moon, we see our tides rise as it is. So addition to that, and with the storm surge we're expecting, we could say that it's going to take, I mean, days for us to actually see most of that to recede, and the damage will be done. I mean, obviously, that's the reason why we wanted everybody to evacuate those areas. Their homes could be flooded. It's going to take time for those things to get better. The cars, any cars in that area, we were talking about parking garages. We're hoping that those parking garages were closed, or if people were parking there, they parked on the upper levels. I mean, this is something, it's like a 1-2 punch, we like to say, but unfortunately it's all happening at one time.
Yeah, and you know, you don't have to make it hard on yourself. The National Hurricane Center has taken all the math out of it for you. They factored in high tide, they factored in the worst case scenario, and 5 to 10 feet, you know, we try to be specific and you know which mandatory evacuation zone you are. It depends on where you are, but 5 to 10 feet of storm surge is possible above ground level. You don't have to worry about trying to factor in tides. All that's been done. All you need to know, 5 to 10 feet of flooding. So, you know, up to 10 feet on your house is possible.
It's bad news.
Yeah.
Not good news at all.
Eric was also asking about rain totals. Whenever we refer to Irma, we say this is not like Harvey. You know, when people are trying to put it in perspective, this is a completely different situation. But still, this is a massive, major storm that's so huge and is going to be moving slowly over Cuba, the Florida Straits, the Florida Keys, and then over Florida. So, I mean, we're in for a lot of rain.
Yeah, you know, Harvey was a different animal.
Totally different.
It stalled out for days and maintained strength as a hurricane for most of that, and then you know, it piled and piled rain on. This is not Harvey.
No,
this is not going
all.
to stop on top of us for days. But it is a Category 5, maybe a Category 4 by the time it makes landfall, hurricane, and they come with a lot of rain regardless.
And so you can see, this is just one of our models. I don't want you to think, oh, we're only going to see 11 inches. This is just one of the models that's pulling anywhere between 8 to 11 inches, 15 inches to 12 inches. What the National Weather Service is stating that we could see isolated areas of up to 20 inches of rainfall as these bands continue to wrap around. Because remember, we're already starting to see the rain move in. So if you're adding up the rainfall from today, going into tonight, going into tomorrow, and the system's supposed to be over us, the hurricane should be over us until tomorrow night, even into Monday. Some of the outer bands will continue. Again, this is just one of the models. What they are saying is anywhere between 15 to 20 inches of rainfall. Isolated areas could be even more. And like you guys, we always see a flooding in an afternoon storm. So can you imagine what our roads, what the ground is going to look like, how saturated it's going to be with isolated areas receiving 20 inches of rain?
Well, right. You look at this right here. Sunday by 2 p.m., about 36 hours, 11 inches of rain, even 8 inches of rain in about 36 hours. Sounds like a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot of rain to fall in a short period of time, especially considering what we go through, and certainly we see ponding and flooding on some long and extended regular summer rain days.
Okay, well, we're going to let you guys get back to it. We have a lot of reporters spread out across South Florida. They're working on getting you new information as well as to what's happening. But we also have to tell you what Irma has been doing, and we're getting new footage to show you the devastation. This is the Caribbean island of Barbuda. That's where Irma first made landfall, and it happened at 2 a.m. So it was in the middle of the night, and you can see, look at that. I mean, trees are gone, homes are gone, destruction everywhere. Buildings left without roofs, without walls, and this is kind of a slow view. As we take it a little bit further, you can see this is what we have to prepare for. Look at the debris. Look at that. One building is standing, one building is gone, and look at the car smashed. Look at that. Fences down. Trees just look like tornadoes have gone through.
Going inside someone's home right here, we're still on the island of Barbuda, showing the extent of the damage and the devastation people are dealing with, trying to clean up from. In some cases, how do you clean up from something like this? You got to process exactly what happened.
And Eric, do you see that? Those are the actual, we were looking at shutters wrapped around trees, thrown on the ground. And that's what we count on so much.
We're drone hovering over Antigua, and it shows really, again, more destruction from Hurricane Irma. Just the frames of roofs, the frames of some houses, roofs are completely gone. You look right down into people's homes. So much damage as far as the eye could see. And then you look here, people evacuating, people who stayed there on the island of Barbuda, fleeing, going to Antigua in some cases, those who survived, taking no chances, because if you've been listening and watching our Weather Authority team, we have Hurricane Jose in that area. And so can you imagine trying to recover from what we saw with Hurricane Irma and know that there is another one, a Category 4, not nearly as large in size, but with the power that is still hovering in that area.
And still, for those islands, the path, very, very similar to Irma. You see people filling up those water bottles right there. You're looking at San Juan, people doing what we're doing, getting the propane, getting the gasoline, getting all kinds of the essentials that they need. I hope we can go back to that drone video later, though. I feel like we just kind of flew by that. And we really need, I mean, we have those drones so we can see exactly what the devastation is there. That was in Barbuda and Antigua. Let's see, I know we're gonna take one of our reporters, but producers, if we can get back to that video, we need to just sit on that, because I think everybody in the Keys needs to realize this is coming in our direction. I know these are the Caribbean islands, but we have our own Keys are islands. That's what they are. And this is what is coming directly towards us. It is still a Category 5 hurricane, and it's over those warm waters. It's going to be in the Florida Straits. It's already the bands are, and it looks like the northern half of that storm is already headed that way. But if you look at this is what a hurricane does.
And what we're not, I don't think, taking into account here is this looks like a lot of wind damage, storm surge, which is something the Keys are going to really have to deal with. Okay, so this video is short.
We got to get more of that.
We do have to get more of that.
That is just unreal. That's the only thing that we're seeing to really see. That's what happens when an eye. You remember, Barbuda, Antigua, they were affected by those hurricane force winds, that eye moving overhead and making landfall. And you made a perfect point. That was dry. That was the inland areas. But we've got the storm surge, the winds, the rain. It's terrifying to see what that storm has already done.
So we're going to keep looking for more video, new images, just because it's really important for you to see exactly what may come our way, and certainly those in the Keys. Why the National Weather Service said you have to get out. There's no safe place to be if you are in the Florida Keys. Let's move to Broward County and Miramar. Erica Rayco has been standing by at a shelter. Erica, where are you?
We are at Coconut Palms Elementary School in Miramar. It's within the big Monarch Lake subdivision off of Miramar Parkway. And in Broward County, there are only 2 shelters that are not at capacity. This is one of them. It's not open just yet, but it will be opening at 7 o'clock this morning as another shelter for people in Broward County. You can see right here at the front of the school, there's a permanent placard in place that says shelter area. This is a safe building where people will be allowed to come starting at 7 o'clock this morning. They're going to accept 1,200 people. It is not pet friendly. And then there is one other shelter that's going to be accepting people as well, and that is Tradewinds Elementary in Coconut Creek. Other than these two schools right now, every shelter in Broward County is at capacity. We've heard from the county, personnel at the Emergency Operations Center telling people that they are doing everything they can to get some more schools up and running, but they're faced with staffing problems. They've got the schools, they've now got to get them staffed before they can start accepting people who have evacuated their homes to come and weather the storm at a school. There was somebody from the fire department as well as the police department, and that Miramar police officer told us that the Broward Sheriff's Office would be sending deputies to help man the shelter, and then the police department would kind of back them up. So right now there's a volunteer inside the school getting things prepared inside the cafeteria auditorium space where they will start taking people in. I'm also told that they are going to provide buses for some people who are at overcrowded shelters and move them into this space. Again, we are at Coconut Palms Elementary in Miramar. It's going to open up at 7 o'clock this morning for 1,200 people without pets to stay throughout Hurricane Irma. Eric and JC.
You know, Erica, there's so many schools obviously in Broward County, but it's not as simple as just saying we're just going to open up a new shelter. We're going to get a school ready. Do you know what's the process involved here in trying to get one of these new shelters ready to go?
That's what we were trying to figure out, and so were the first responders who were sent out here to try to get things in order. So they've got the space, and I know the biggest thing is getting the volunteers, the staffing, whether it's help from the Red Cross, also coordinating first responders to be here in case of any emergency. So that all has to fall into place, and then somebody here from the school board to come and unlock the school and get everything inside ready. There's not much to prepare inside the actual space because people who do evacuate and come to a school are required to bring their own supplies, their own food, their own water, and their own bedding.
Erica, how many do we have open in Broward County right now? We started off with 14, but we've added more shelters since then.
Right. There's only 2 more that have been added, which is this school and the school in Coconut Creek. But again, as I mentioned, they are working, scrambling to try to get more schools prepared for more people to go to.
So we have a total of 16, and the original 14 are at capacity. And so we've got that Coconut Creek, Tradewinds Elementary, and then we have where Erica's standing right now, but we've got a couple more hours before that one opens.
Well, you heard Governor Scott say time and time again, volunteers. We need volunteers. We need people to sign up for volunteers. This is exactly why, is that when they want to go ahead and open up new shelters, they need staffing and they need people and they need volunteers. So the opportunity to do so
but
is still very active.
I love that our people have come together. We have 17,000 volunteers right now in the state of Florida, and that's exactly what the governor asked for. So it is making a difference. Okay, here are the addresses. I know Erica has said all this information, but we keep repeating it because you may have just turned on your television. Coconut Palm Elementary School, that's where Erica is at. That's the shelter in Miramar. It's located at 13601 Monarch Lakes Boulevard. So once again, that one should open at 7 a.m., but give them some time to get organized over there.
As the other Tradewinds Elementary School, 5400 Johnson Road. That one is in Coconut Creek.
Okay, so they are up to 16 shelters, but 14 have filled. Those 2 are still available, and more to come as necessary because, you know, in Miami-Dade, they're expecting 65,000 people, and right now they have 23,000. In Broward, they have 13,000, but of course they're expecting more. In total, I mean, we can handle hundreds of thousands of evacuees if need be.
And when those decisions are made and when we have updates, we'll have Christy Kruger, who is at the Broward County EOC. This morning we have Bob Norman. He is at the Miami-Dade EOC with more information on the shelters there. Bob.
Yeah, I'm here at the Miami-Dade Emergency Operations Center. You can see behind me, we've got county employees, we've got law enforcement, we've got firefighters, we've even got military hard at work, and a lot of work it's been. The county's managed to set up more than 40 shelters. The last count held about 23,000 people with a capacity of up to 100,000. It's been a huge job that's got to be considered an overall success for the county and Mayor Carlos Jimenez. But as the mayor admitted, there's been what he called glitches, including a huge struggle to get those the shelters up in a timely manner and a failure by the county to quickly inform the public when a few shelters filled up. And that led to some major unnecessary inconveniences for some evacuees. Another glitch came in something that is so important to so many people, an issue that's near and dear to your heart, JC, pet-friendly shelters. For several hours yesterday, there were no pet-friendly shelters accepting any new arrivals. And of course, that's not acceptable. The mayor admitted that, and he said the county has learned from this experience for the next time, and of course, as we know, there will be a next time. JC?
There always is in South Florida. It definitely did seem we're here 12 hours, and then we've got Lori and Calvin, and they're here for 12 hours, so we're not missing a minute of anything happening in our counties. And it did seem like there were a lot of problems getting information from Miami-Dade shelters, and we have, more than 1 million people waiting on word. So I'm hoping those glitches can get fixed. It can be more in a timely manner, because this is life or death situation.
And time is short here, Bob. We were looking at a situation where we were going to start seeing tropical storm force winds later on today, and hurricane force winds shortly thereafter, and it's going to stay in place for quite some time. So getting things all pulled together and making sure people know where they're going needs to happen quickly.
Right, and the good news is those glitches it's running pretty smooth right now. And if the numbers are correct, there's probably 80,000 roughly spots open. So there's plenty of room in the shelters, and there is a new pet-friendly shelter at Highland Oaks Middle School. So everybody should be taken care of right now in Miami-Dade if they need to find that shelter.
That is very good news. Very good news. Bob Norman live with us at the Miami-Dade Emergency Operations Center. Thanks, Bob.
Okay, well, we do have Leanne Morejon. She was at a Hialeah gas station. They were boarding up, and last time we checked on her, they had some gas, about 2,500 gallons. Let's see if that is all gone right now.
We're at the West Star gas station in Hialeah at the corner of Lejeune Road and East 25th Street. And incredibly, this West Star station is not only open, but they say they still have gas. The guy inside, the guy who owns this place, tells us he believes they have about 2,500 gallons of gas left, enough for about 200 cars. And he believes that depending on how busy it gets in the overnight hours, it could last until the morning. They plan to close up shop at 4 p.m. no matter what. They're putting up boards to protect their business. As far as the conditions here, some rain and wind is starting to feel felt. You can see there is some light reflecting off the roads. That's because they're wet right now. And of course, the situation is that we're starting to feel the presence of Irma as those outer bands make their way through the Hialeah area where we are right now.
Okay, Leanne Morejon in Hialeah, thank you. Loss of power is a big concern as we start to feel the outer bands of Hurricane Irma. We already know 10,000 are without electricity in Miami-Dade County, and we know that millions could be without the power, no lights, no TVs, no AC.
It's going to happen
when this storm comes through.
Local 10's Ada Perez at a Florida Power and Light facility in Pompano Beach.
So, of course,